name is Reverend Keith Hagerman, the minister of Wesley United Church in Cambridge. Welcome to my kitchen. I know that many of you are gathered in your kitchens in various places, or perhaps in your dining rooms, gathered together to take part in this time of reflection. And so, welcome to my kitchen. I've been thinking about who we are as a community of Wesley, and thinking about how the kitchen is part of what is sacred for us. For those of you that do not know, on Wednesday mornings each week, there's a group of people that arrive to make bread, to make pies. They form the dough together, kneading it together, mixing all the ingredients together, and then there's other people that roll it out into shape and put it in the pie plates, and then others put the filling in, and then a top is put on the pie, and then they are baked, all ready to be then sold in the market in Cambridge on Saturday mornings. Also on Saturday mornings there is a cafe at Wesley where people make apple dumplings to sell and coffee, and people come together for community. There is a community formed around Wesley, or around food at Wesley, as people come together to create food together, to make food and enjoy that community together, but also as others share that food with them. Food goes beyond these things at Wesley, for there is also a monthly seniors luncheon that people come from all over and take part. There's food to gather people together in community. Or once a month we also have a brunch where we gather to eat on Sunday after church and to share food together. The large community says that you can't have community without food, that it's as we eat together that divisions are broken down and we connect to one another and to the holiness of life, and we become connected in body and in spirit. The kitchen is busy most days at Wesley. Other days there are those that are involved in a social enterprise, helping those that are in recovery programs to learn some new skills and to gain some job experience as they make meat pies together. I've been thinking about all of these things and thinking about how Jesus was also about food. We often see him eating together with other people, connecting to the fullness of life. We hear the story of the feeding of the 5,000, and we also hear that when physical hunger is satisfied, that people know wholeness. We hear that Jesus is the bread of life. And perhaps as followers, we too are to be bread. So grab a coffee. I have mine. And perhaps something to nibble on. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered together, Jesus is with us. And so in this online community, we gather with others, and we know that we are not alone, that we gather in the presence of the holy, in a holy place where food is created and where food is shared. Bread is ready. It's now time to come out of the oven. I baked it for you, and I want to share it with you, but I can't physically share it with you. So I invite you to get some bread, or perhaps a cracker, or some trail mix, or a cookie, or something to eat, that we may eat together. The smell of freshly baked bread. Bread that has within it salt that gives it flavor, wheat that connects us to the earth, water that connects us to the spirit, that primal element, yeast that cause the dough to grow and to expand, and sugar to make it soft. Bread that was kneaded and shaped and formed into usable loaves. Bread that connects us to the community at Wesley. Bread that connects us to Jesus, who said, "I am the bread of life." And perhaps we are bread for others. We are the bread of encouragement and shaping and forming others. We are the bread that connects them to spirit. We are the bread that connects them to to the spiritual side of life that connects them to the earth. Perhaps we are the catalyst that causes growth within them, that makes the way, that helps to shape life and makes it malleable, makes it possible to move forward. Bread that Jesus took and said, "Whenever you eat together, remember me." And so we gather in community, united in the breaking of bread. And as we do this, we are reminded that Jesus also is with us. Well, my family has all arrived, and we all love fresh bread. And in our home, it's our practice to sing a grace before we eat. So I have a new grace, which I'm going to teach you, and you're welcome to sing along as well. It goes like this. Bread is broken, friendship's token, in our sharing God is known. So the words are, bread is broken, friendship's token, in our sharing God is known. Bread is broken, friendship's token, in our sharing God is known. And so now it's time to get into this bread. Who wants the first piece?
I do.
I'll second.
Do you like the end?
Whoops,
Ooh, yes.
that wasn't a good cut. But there's more.
Thank you.
So we've been exploring the spirituality of bread. Bread for the journey to you. May it give strength to your bodies and to your souls as you eat together with us, as we join in community this day and are united with people around the world that also join in the breaking of bread.
Hi, welcome to this day, to this time and this place. My name is John Anderson, and I'm glad you've chosen to join me as we share in this online gathering of the family of faith that we know as Wesley United Church. I've been part of this community for about 10 years, and today I want to explore with you what I have discovered so far about prayer, or meditation, because I believe they both mean the same thing, and how that fits into my life. Now, I don't know about you, but I have always had an uneasy relationship with prayer throughout my life. As a young child, I was taught some prayers that I could recite at meal times, at bedtime, and of course, the Lord's Prayer, which we recited in school at the start of each day and in Sunday school and church on Sundays. I didn't think much about the words. They were just words that you were supposed to recite as part of the proper rituals of good little boys and girls. It's probably a good thing, too, because if I thought too hard about those bedtime lines, if I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take, I might have had a very difficult time wanting to go to sleep at all. And I'm quite certain that the Lord hardly ever managed to make me truly thankful for what we were about to receive when the dinner menu included Brussels sprouts and mushrooms. And as for the Lord's Prayer, it always seemed like a race to see how fast we could mumble through the words and get to Amen. The only times when I ever remember prayers feeling like a real conversation with God were the few occasions when I had done something bad enough that I was desperate to enlist God's help to keep my parents from finding out, in exchange for my promise that I would be the best boy I knew how to be from that point onward. As I reflect back, I'm not sure that God ever kept his end of the deal, that my parents not find out, and I'm quite sure that I never kept my end of the deal, that I would be the best boy I knew how to be from that point forward. My prayer life as an adult wasn't much different. I observed all the conventions of a religious person, with grace before meals, bedtime prayers, and prayers in church. For some periods of my life, I even practiced a kind of daily devotions using a book of prayers and readings to start my day. The discipline seemed like a positive structure to my day, and some of the collected prayers were beautifully poetic works of art. And then I became a minister and had to lead in prayer. I worked hard to craft prayers that would move people, the congregations could relate to and feel put into words their silent yearnings. And it was hard. It got even harder when worship styles moved to more participation by the congregation, and prayers needed to be printed in bulletins so that participants could respond with the words in bold print. Putting together those prayers was always the hardest and most procrastinated part of the weekly worship preparations for me. These written prayers always felt contrived, a ritual to be performed, and they always felt empty somehow. As an encounter with the divine, they almost never felt real. But what would it take for prayer to feel real? That's the quest I've been on for the past few years. Perhaps that's the spiritual quest I've been on for my whole life, and I want to share some of what I've learned with you today. So, let's begin. Just get yourself sitting comfortably in a chair, and I want to introduce you to a kind of prayer that we call breath work. Now, the chances are you're breathing right now. It's a basic requirement of being a living being, but probably you haven't been thinking much about it up until this point when I've brought it to your attention. But now that we are paying attention to our breathing, let's pause for a moment to take a deep breath together. So breathe with me. Take a deep breath in. Hold it. Now slowly exhale. And hold that at the end before you breathe back in. And let's repeat that. A deep breath in. Hold it at the end. Slowly exhale your breath. Holding at the end. We sometimes call that taking a breather. It's a way of collecting the scattered pieces of ourselves and quieting the static of life, if only for a second or two. We're doing that all the time, of course, without even thinking about it. We may take a deep sigh in the middle of a task. We may yawn as we try to focus our attention, or we may gasp when surprised. It becomes a breather when we do it deliberately, with awareness and attention. We could also call it a mini prayer, a pause that refreshes, that recharges our energy. So let's share another mini prayer together before we continue. Breathe with me. Breathe in. Hold. Slowly exhale. Hold. One more time.
I'd like to share a set of promises with you, written by Christian Larson. I actually came across them about 15 years ago, and for a time in my life, I said them every night out loud to myself before I went to bed. I promise myself to be so strong that nothing can disturb my peace of mind. I promise myself to talk health, happiness, and prosperity with every person I meet. I promise myself to make all my friends believe that there is something worthwhile in them. I promise myself to look at the sunny side of everything and make my optimism come true. I promise myself to think only the best, to work for only the best, and to expect only the best. I promise myself to be just as enthusiastic about the successes of others as I am about my own. greater achievements of the future. I promise myself to wear a cheerful expression at all times and to offer a smile to every living creature I meet. I promise myself to spend so much time improving myself that I have no time to criticize others. I promise myself to be too large for worry, too noble for anger, too strong for fear, and too happy to permit the presence of trouble. I promise myself to think well of myself and to proclaim that fact to the world, not in loud words, but in great deeds. And I promise myself to live in the faith that the whole world is on my side, so long as I am true to the best that is in me. Blessed be.
In the bulb there is a flower, in the seed an apple tree, unbeknownst until the season, something God alone can see. And I wonder in this pandemic, what is it that God alone can see? What can we see of God at this time? Last weekend it snowed, as we know, and I took a picture of some tulips that had suddenly bloomed and were bowing their heads under the weight of the cold and the snow first thing in the morning. And I thought that's perhaps a symbol for us in this pandemic, that we continue to bloom, and yet there are moments when we're bowed down. Later in the day, and indeed by the next day, the tulips were standing up straight, and isn't that like us too? Moments of being bowed down, moments of being standing up, feeling firm, feeling confident, and able to move on to our day. I wonder what God can see in this pandemic. Things that seem to be emerging are we have to be intentional about abiding in the vine. We have to be intentional about abiding in this creation home of ours. We need to be attentive to how we want to reach out to others. It's not so simple anymore. Phone up a friend, meet in a restaurant, have dinner together, connect. It's not as simple as on Mother's Day, children going over to pay, honoring, bringing gifts to their mothers. We have to think through, what is it we're actually wanting to do and to say, and what's the best way to show our connection to one another and to home. Intentionality, attentiveness. And are those things that we could carry through once this pandemic is done, if it ever is fully done, whether COVID-19 becomes just like a typical flu season, year by year by year? How will our lives be changed as we move forward in God's love? How will we abide within our own homes, in our own relationships, in our world? How will we take that intentionality, that attentiveness, that love, that intimacy with us, that connectedness, our new understandings about things? Jesus says, I am the true vine. My Father is the vine dresser, and you are the branches. Abide in me. Each of us is abiding in the love of God in Jesus Christ. Each of us is abiding in community at this time. How will you take that wonderful gift of life, of abiding in the home that is God, both this day and into the future? How will you remember what you saw in this time and use it to nurture the vine of community in God's name?
Amazing grace, that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. 'Twas blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
And in November 2019, the Region of Waterloo Council received a report. Now, why is the Region of Waterloo so interested? Well, part of it is the University of Waterloo has a globally significant research capability and planning capability to deal with this, which has sensitized the regional politicians and given them the abilities to deal with it. Now, let's look at one potential future. And recent research suggests that an unstoppable runaway climate change is possible due to the output of methane, which is a much stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, from two places: warming northern permafrost areas and deep ocean methyl hydrates. As the methane is reduced from those places, it'll increase dramatically in the atmosphere, which will lead to more warming. And I show you two photographs from Alaska. One is methane trapped in ice, and this is methane production in the winter, and you'll see the volume of it coming out of the muds in this lake. And the other is a lady lighting the methane coming out of one of these bubbles under the ice, and you'll see, well, that's natural gas. It's booming and burning. The worry now is that the planet may, and I use the words, blow through the 2-degree increase to much higher levels. Above 2 degrees, we have massive ecological, social, and economic changes which are unavoidable. And large portions of the Earth's surface will become uninhabitable, leading to massive human misery and immigration.
It's absolutely essential that all sectors of government, all sectors of society, must react to this problem as best we can. But Canadian society is very well structured to do what needs to be done. Canadians are pragmatic, they're thoughtful, and when there's a problem, we work together on it. So my final message is, we must work together, and I'm hopeful that we will work together into the indefinite future to deal with this very important scientific and political issue. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.
Here I am in the sanctuary at Wesley. The original part of our church is the sanctuary, and it's now 141 years old. It is a graceful stone building in historic Galt, the centerpiece of Market Square in downtown Cambridge. With buttresses on the walls that support the roof and a steeple reaching to the sky, a reminder that this is a holy place and of a spirituality in the center of life. But the bad news is that over time, our church has experienced a little bit of a middle-age spread as some of the structure holding up the roof has settled. That's a very simplistic way to put it. But as a result, the roof has been pushing out on the walls, threatening their structural integrity. That's the bad news, but there's good news. The congregation has decided to undertake a project to raise funds and to do the repairs. And so we are now in the midst of the Raise the Roof campaign, and we are in the midst of those repairs. The good news is that while the church is closed to the public, this work is going on. I'm up in the balcony, and in a moment you will be able to see tie rods that have just been placed from one side of the sanctuary to another, tying the two sides together. I'm headed now out into the entrance to the balcony, and here there's a ladder which will take us up to the area above the ceiling. See you up there. Here I am coming up into the attic of the Wesley Sanctuary. It's a long way up. There's more than one ladder. And I have Gary Greer from the property committee here with me, who is the person that's showing me around, and he's the knowledge. He's the one that shows me everything and what needs to happen. So here we are upstairs, and there's lots of beams all around us. So the roof is above my head, and then we have the rafters that are here, and then all the major structure. And so down here, these are purlins that kind of run all along, and those are probably about a foot across. And you see the rafters are leaning on those. And then we have these cross braces that are coming up here, and other cross braces, and you can see how they're fastened together. And there's many of these as we walk along this catwalk up here. Moving into the center of the whole sanctuary. The structure of the roof here at Wesley is a heavy timber roof framing. as you can see in the picture, there are many different kinds of beams that are present up here. There's rafters and collar ties, there's trusses and cross bases, there's horizontal beams and purlins which support the rafters in between the trusses. And part of the problem that we've encountered here is that some of the ties that bind were not binding as well as they should have. Cracks had appeared in beams suggesting that there were some stresses which needed to be corrected, and sometimes that had meant that hardwood dowels fastening beams together had been sheared off. Sometimes those plates holding the ends of beams were no longer holding them, and as a result, the roof, the sides were pushing out, and the top was pulling down, creating a bow in the roof. And in the center of all of this structure is the king post. And the king post had begun to sag. And that king post was really holding up the ceiling for the sanctuary. It was part of the structure that held up it. And so it was in danger of this ceiling letting go. Its health had been ignored as we had continued on our merry way for years, oblivious to the fact that there were problems that were starting to happen. It needed our attention and our nurture in order to fulfill its purpose. So I've been thinking about all of these beams fastened together, and thinking about the connections between one and another, how they support each other. And thinking about that we're like that as a community as well, supporting each other and working together. Just like these beams are connected and supporting each other.